Cheers, guys. Epix911, welcome to the Elitist Geek VR news for Monday, October 3rd, 2016. Absolutely no different than the last few days and weeks have been. Very hectic, lots to talk about, so let's jump right into VR, guys. Start with some game updates. Serious Sam VR, The Last Hope. If you've seen any of my previous videos talking about this game, it's pretty safe to say I'm jonesing for it big time. Well, we've got a couple of updates. We now know the release date, and that'll be October 17th. I think there's going to be, a couple of points of view on this one. Most people I think are going to think they're either crazy launching 4 days post PlayStation VR, or they're going to think of it as brilliant. I don't think there's going to be a hell of a lot of middle ground. I could be wrong. I kind of think it's a good move. And yeah, that's the release date. We also know the price, $39.99 US. But let's put that into some context because it sounds steep when you say it. We have been so used to indie offerings the last few months, post-launch. That's what the majority of titles have been, right? One of the more polished offerings that I've played in all these past few months of virtual reality, having gone retail, is raw data. Raw data for me and a lot of you, maybe there were some of you who expected it, but it came out of left field, absolutely out of nowhere. It marketed itself in an underwhelming way, I felt. The videos didn't even begin to do the gameplay justice. Calling itself a wave-based shooter almost with a yawn, right? Like they could have just done such a better job marketing it. But maybe that was their intent, because the point is it really became a popular title. It also, it's about the same price, $39.99 US. I think it's a little cheaper, 34 or something like that. Canadian, I know it's 44. But either way, the point is I happily paid that, and that was for an indie game. If Serious Sam can, just as at a minimum, offer something similar, I'll be happy. I got a feeling they're going to blow past that, and it's going to be just an amazing virtual reality experience. So for me, absolutely not a sticking point. I cannot wait to try it. I think it's going to be fantastic. We know that it's going to be early access. It's not a full release come 17th. It's early access. So super curious on what they have to offer, right? Again, if we look at the raw data example, they offered, put it this way, they did, in my opinion, almost the perfect early access. For somebody who doesn't like early access in general, and lots of reasons, and we've talked about a lot of those in the past, there's definitely pros. And if you're going to do it, they should almost be the blueprint on how to do it properly. Have complete, ready content for people to try, right? Don't let the users necessarily in too early to help you design, because you're going to have way too many chefs in the kitchen. That's just my personal feeling. I think they got end users involved at the right point in time. Hopefully, Serious Sam, the same deal. And they are going to have a Rift version available once the touch controllers are launched. Next up, Batman VR. We find out now it will be exclusive to PlayStation VR for 6 months and Resident Evil 12 months. So there we go with exclusivity again. Pretty long terms of jail time there, 6 and 12 months. But there you have it. So if you are getting a PlayStation VR and Batman is on the horizon for you, and or Resident Evil, there you go. Many months to enjoy it before the rest of the world can. We also get word from the devs of Final Approach, namely the folks at Phaserlock, that they are going to offer a free Halloween-themed DLC. And I guess that's the only real way to describe it. It's not an expansion, it's not an upgrade, it's not really a patch. It's more or less DLC content for free. It's going to offer new missions, lots of Halloween-themed stuff, everything from your hangar area, etc. So very cool. I love reading stuff like that. That's almost the opposite. You've got the Vanishing Realms approach, which I also didn't have a problem with. But having the approach where you're giving something back for free initially for DLC. I think that's a pretty classy move, and it's definitely going to be a good PR move for Phaser Lock. All right, news-wise, there is a very speculative rumor going around as of today on the price of the Google Daydream. So it was an exclusive article. Of course, it's broken everywhere since then on Variety.com that the Google Daydream, get this guys, is going to retail for $79.99 US, which is a crazy low price. But holy crap, if that is a true, legit price for that device, and remember, it does offer a form of tracking that the Gear VR here does not. It has the potential to make amazing inroads into virtual reality. And now, if they deliver at that price point, they may just pull it off, and we may have a consumer product that is in the hands of a hell of a lot of people. The missing component in all this is the hardware list. What works on this device? We've talked about some of the ones that we know are going to work, but what does that full list look like? I'd love to see it, but holy crap, if $79.99 is their entry-level price, even if they're just breaking even with that, for whatever reason, talk about awesome. They have an ability to, like I said, get a lot of units out there and quick. And the timing, come on, 3 months to holidays, perfect, absolutely perfect. But again, just a rumor at this point. Next up, HTC wants your ideas on Vive accessories for a chance of winning a free, all-inclusive, bundled HTC Vive unit. So that's the controllers, the lighthouses, the full kit to the top 3 ideas. Now, I'm not going to get into the details of all the stipulations for the contest. I will have the links. It's just because there's a lot involved in how you approach it. Have a look. Some of you guys, just in speaking with you, are just freaking think tank machines. So if you're one of those people and you know who you are because we've had conversation, you know, even if you already have one, I would seriously put some ideas forth. There is some amazing stuff. I still love, for example, my Vive headphones. And some people are always going to look at that and say, oh yeah, you were just plugging it for him because he gave you a set. I've said it then, I'll say it now. I paid for those. I even threw extra in outside of the shipping because I didn't even want there to be any kind of a bias. If it had sucked, I would have said it sucked. The truth of the matter is I love them. I do not use my Vive without them. So there's all kinds of room for innovation, guys, and a company that is willing to go out beyond their R&D and their research team for new stuff is a company that I have a lot of respect for, right? Some people are going to use that argument, well, you shouldn't be getting consumers to do that for you. No, I think this is in addition to what they do internally. And hell, if good ideas come out of this, everyone wins. That's my take on it. So check out the details in the link in the description per usual. Matterport. These are the guys I talked about in a story 2 months ago. There was some misinformation about who qualifies for their content. It turns out it's consumers, not devs. Devs can have access, but it's a little bit more involved and not quite as attractive price-wise. But what these guys have now come out and said is they've amassed a library, over 300,000 captured locations across the globe that can form the basis of a virtual reality experience. Think of them as captured assets, right? And the closest to an idea of what these would feel like would be the application for Vive called Realities. Realities is 360, but it's very high def, and it pulls it off in a really fantastic way. It's how I imagined before I actually got to try it what VR tourism would feel like. And all these months later, it's still one of the best offerings for exactly that. So very cool. Check that out. That's Matterport, who now claim they have the largest library of real-world VR places. UploadVR had an interesting article today regarding tomorrow's Google press conference in San Francisco. Now, this isn't going to be a pure virtual reality conference, but it will contain virtual reality topics. And UploadVR said or wrote what they believe the 5 questions are going to be that we get answers for tomorrow. I'm just going to go over those briefly. So the first one is, what hardware is Google making for Daydream? That'll be very informative in terms of, look, what are they outsourcing? What's third party? What are they bringing to the table? Next up, when can we use Daydream ourselves? Obviously, the availability factor. Initially, they want it out for devs, etc. How much will it really cost? And we talked about what the rumored price is going to be. Next up, what will be their killer app? Or will there be a killer app, right? If you look at the HTC Vive, I think most would agree for the bundled in stuff, or certainly for the creative tool sets, Tilt Brush went above and beyond what most people expected. So I would hope that they would have something on par, if not better, for their launch. And finally, the biggest question is, has Google truly solved inside-out position tracking? Now, they've mentioned it many times. I've talked about it many times on this news show, and we don't know. But it's one of those questions that they believe, VR, we will get an answer to tomorrow. So super curious about that last point myself. Can't wait to find out. I'll be following that pretty closely, even though I'll be at work for the majority of it. All right. Next up, news headline from the Wall Street Journal asking about, or rather informing on, how to best set up a virtual reality play space, that is. Now, I've kind of talked about mine to death, right? The man cave, which has my home theater section, my gaming side, and the VR quote-unquote play space that's constantly changing depending on who's here and what my requirements are. It can be as big as most of the room, which is super, super rare, half, etc. So they get into that too, and they bring up some really, really good suggestions. The first of which is to make a clean sweep. Now, anybody who's used the HTC Vive controllers has probably done this at some point, either reached up over enthusiastically, smashed their controller into the ceiling, the ground, walls, TVs, or like me, and this is in one of my outtakes, and one day I might put these up just because some of them are funny. Like, I fell asleep during one newscast where I'm literally passed out for 30 minutes before I wake up. That was that really, really late night one. One where I'm doing a game and I thrust the controller into that wall of boxes behind me, and literally the whole thing just explodes all over me. Just some funny stuff like that. So I agree with them. Make a clean sweep. Check out. Make sure there's nothing. Trust me, when you're in VR, you start flailing at times, even though you may think you won't. Oh yeah, you will at some point. Next, they talk about feeling your boundaries. And I think this one is absolutely critical. And it can be something small, right? Laying down a rug, or something where the texture changes and you can feel it with your feet. To indicate the boundaries, I think, is super, super important. Even just a little piece of string, something you'd feel through a sock or barefoot or whatever. So absolutely. And then they talk about swiveling. Now, absolutely. There would be no question in my mind, and probably most of you Rift and Vive users as well, that, or hell, Gear VR too, that a swivel-based chair is mandatory. You need that. The old school stationary static chairs, no, they're not going to cut it in VR at all. Fourth, keep out the critters. My cat can testify to that. I've accidentally, let's just say, walked into him a few times while doing VR. So definitely keep a mindful eye out for your little critters, your little wee ones. And lastly, make VR a spectator sport. And absolutely 100% agree with that. You can have more fun almost than you've had with your family with any board game, just watching each other experience VR, especially for the first time. It's priceless. It's seriously priceless. And I still remember it to this day. It had the best impact on me for that whole first post-launch week. Next up, story on OTOY, OTOY. These guys first, got into the news November 2015, where they put a Vive controller, and they were looking for a solution for inside-out tracking. Well, what they've been experimenting with in the meantime is creating light fields using the Gear VR. Now, a light field, think of it as like a holographic image. There's a video link for this below where they use the Green Goblin, right? DC's Green Goblin, using this technology. So they get into some technical details, but the main thing to know is the requirements. You need to be able to push about 1 to 3 megabits streaming wise. And what they do is some predictive algorithms. So they'll get an object and then they will predict angles, different angles and light calculations. The end result is you get the Green Goblin moving his head in different positions based on their tech. So all kinds of cool potential for using light fields within virtual reality. Like I said, it's a little on the technical side, but UploadVR does a good job in breaking it down, kind of in layman's terms, so that it's not super overwhelming. But definitely check that out. Check some of the videos out as well. Next up, news piece on BodyVR. Now, BodyVR, and we've talked about educational stuff, is an educational VR application that provides a tour for the human body. Now, I am a huge Carl Sagan geek. I remember watching Cosmos with my dad, and it was probably the most memorable, shared experience that I have with my dad, is watching the original Cosmos with him and seeing Carl Sagan in action. Now, Melody Sheep has some really cool, of course I forget it off the top of my head, when you do the voice changing. Anyways, they do that with his voice and make it sound like he's singing, right? But there's a part in Cosmos where Carl says, "And we're made of trillions of cells. Within us is a little universe." And so true. And that's what this app nails to a T, is how you navigate through the human body, whether it's examining white blood cells, red blood cells. It's a comprehensive, very cool instructional tour of the human body. The only thing I would change, and the voice guy who narrates it isn't bad, but, and probably where I'm going with the names on this, Tom Baker, some of our other actors, James Earl Jones, I would pick one of those guys. That would just complete it. But again, not to put down the current narrator. He's not bad at all, but it could be so much more awesome. Next up, we have official word that PlayStation VR will support features of the PlayStation 4, such as live streaming, video recording, and the share button, right, where you can share videos and pictures. So that's good to hear, to confirm. That had been a question for the last few months that wasn't being confirmed by Sony, so it's nice to have that confirmation out. Next up, last news story, company called Limitless. And they are on a mission to make VR animation basically accessible to developers in the mainstream, right? Your small indie bands of animators. Now, person in question who created the application and the company behind it is Tom Sanoki, and he's a former Pixar employee, left Pixar. He's also worked on video games like Destiny, etc. Now he's working on this. Very cool video, very cool link, because it's such an intuitive looking tool set. So he's got little things like being able to animate characters. They claim they really streamline the process. You can do interactive character stuff. So characters with environment, characters with other characters, and import stuff directly into this app. So the last time I fooled around with any kind of program like this has literally been over a decade, so I'm probably the worst guy to critique it. I haven't tried it yet. Maybe on the horizon, but realistically, with everything else, probably never going to get to that. So if that at all interests you, check out the link and give it a shot yourself. All right, guys, that's it for the news today. A little longer, but holy crap, so much to talk about, which is just awesome. So much more coming down the pipe. All right, guys, cheers as always, and definitely catch you on the VR flip side.